Hello, and these are your stories for the third week of November 2021. Well, COP26 wrapped up in Glasgow, and a lot of commitments were made by governments and corporations. Commitments to reduce coal were a bit tepid, but this was, despite the breathless press statements, never going to be the last best chance. The climate data will likely get worse, as will be the events on the ground, and governments and corporations will step up their games in future years because they have no choice. Arguing against atmospheric chemistry is futile. Plus, in case nobody told you, there's going to be a COP27 and a 28, and so on. So let's turn to the stories of the week, starting with transportation. At Glasgow, the climate group's EV100 initiative picked up steam with 7 new members, meaning they commit to completely electrifying their company fleets by 2030. The 7 new fleets represent over 250,000 vehicles. Also announced, 30 countries, 11 car makers, and other partners issued a non-binding joint declaration to move away from the internal combustion engine. The UK and India were 2 notable signatories. The US was not, although GM and Ford signed on, as did Mercedes, BYD, Volvo, and Jaguar Land Rover. And speaking of GM, it's finished with its Cadillac EV My Way, or the Highway Dealership Network restructuring plan. Cadillac has now cut the number of dealers from 920 to 560. Each of the remaining ones have to pay between $200,000 and $500,000 to build out their charging networks and EV support infrastructure. Those who decided not to participate got bought out by GM to a total of $274 million. In line with the overall EV effort, a Reuters analysis last week indicated that global automakers plan on spending more than $500 billion on electric vehicles and batteries through 2030. So this thing is growing quite rapidly. Staying with electromobility, U.S. startup Wright Electric has plans for a 100-seat fully electric regional jet that could take off as early as 2026. It's an electric-powered version of the BAE 146 regional jet, originally with 4-engine aircraft. Now will be retrofitted with 2-megawatt powertrain to have a flight time of about an hour and a range of 460 miles. It does perhaps give new meaning to the phrase range anxiety. Switching to the grid, Entergy Mississippi will add 500 megawatts of renewable power by 2025, followed by another 500 megawatts by 2027, which will help it shut down some of its older natural gas plants. Entergy has been a true laggard in carbon reduction. Its renewables constitute less than 1% of its current power generating capability. Meanwhile, Georgia Power issued an RFP for 1,030 megawatts of new renewables. The projects must be 3 megawatts or greater, with commissioning dates in 2023 and 2024. Out in Hawaii, Hawaiian Electric plans to add another 50,000 rooftop solar systems and 1 gigawatt of renewables to its generating capacity as part of its effort to cut carbon emissions by 70% by 2030. And they're not the only ones making waves on the rooftop. Australia just passed a new milestone with 3 million rooftop solar systems at 13 gigawatts installed, with an average of nearly 1 kilowatt for every Australian. And finally, 2 stories related to the larger electric grid. First, the Energy Information Administration here in the United States reports that on average, U.S. electricity customers experienced just over 8 hours of power interruptions in 2020, the most since it began collecting data in 2013. The EIA noted that the U.S. experienced 14 hurricanes in 2020 and 11 major storms. And finally, the infrastructure bill that was just signed into law had a few provisions around transmission that are worth noting. The bill strengthens the hand of federal regulators to permit new transmission projects, giving authority to the DOE to designate national transmission corridors for clean electricity projects. In addition, it makes clear that the FERC has the authority to give the Heisman to state objections that have in the past torpedoed nearly every transmission project crossing state lines. So in the future, it may come down to just how strongly the feds and future presidents want new lines to be built. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.